Hey everybody, Mike Day here with Mike Day Concrete, showing you how we pour house and garage concrete floors. Today we got a pretty good size house. I think it's like 52 by 28 with I believe it was like a 26 garage. And we're gonna be pumping the concrete, as you can see, pumping the concrete to get it in place. Now, pumping the concrete is a lot easier than shooting the concrete over the edge of the foundation. What we're doing is pouring what I call a basement floor. Now in Maine, a lot of people have full foundation basements like this, and the reason is because in the winter the dirt freezes up here, the earth freezes about 4 feet deep. So if you don't get below the frost line, there's a pretty good chance something's gonna heave. You know, that frozen dirt's gonna thaw and unthaw and stuff's gonna move. So when they dig a foundation like this, a full one, they'll go down 6, 7, 8 feet in the ground and they'll pour a foundation like this, and then we come in and pour the basement floor. That's what we're doing here today. We're pumping out this first truck. I'm the one in the middle. I'm magging a pad around that little pin right there. We set that pin to grade with a laser previously, and then we also shot grades around the perimeter and snapped the chalk line. So that's what we're going by, you know, up against the concrete walls. We're magging pad to the chalk line that we got, and that gives us something to go by when we screed the floors. So we definitely use a laser to set our grades with, and then we could keep the laser up and just shoot wet pads with a laser and like a grade stick, or we can set pins like we did here today. We're actually using something called Crete Pin Pro. You can Google that, and it allows you to set that little yellow piece right to grade, and you can mag your pad like I'm doing right to grade. Now that's flat right across there from the outside where they're magging against the wall to those pins we set. That's nice and flat. And now what Darren and I are doing is we're striking a pad with the 14-foot screed to give us something to go by in the middle. And then Harvey's using the screed, and he can check as he pulls that backwards. You know, he gives it a little throttle, some vibration, he pulls it backwards, and then he's watching his outside edges to make sure they're touching those pads, what we call scoring, and that tells us that, hey, we got a nice flat floor right there. And then I can bull float right over it, and you can see when I run that bull float back and forth, there's no dips under that bull float, there's no gaps, both edges are touching, so there's no humps under it. Everything's really nice and flat. So that's kind of how you should be looking to screed a floor if you're pouring a concrete floor. I mean, we got our own method, definitely different than most people, but it works for us. It's pretty fast, I think. I think the whole time, the time it took us to pour the house and the garage floor total on this job was an hour. So when you get, you know, a bunch of guys that know what they're doing, and you got a method that works, that's fast, you can get a lot of concrete down pretty quickly. I come from a background of commercial work, so you know, when I was taught concrete, it was we got to get this thing in as fast as possible. Usually, you know, it's 300 yards, 400 yard pours. Could be 10,000 square feet, could be 20,000 square feet. It could be slab on grades or up on the 12th floor. You know, it was just, I come from a world where there was a lot of concrete being poured, and we had to get it in fast so that we could get back and finish it without losing too many guys back from the pour. So it was always, you know, my boss was always like, hurry, 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 let's get this thing in as fast as possible, and then we can get our finishers back there to start finishing the concrete. So I kind of took, you know, a variation of that when I went into business for myself, and it was like, let's get these floors poured out where we have super high quality, super really flat floors, if that's what we're looking for, something flat, doesn't have a drain in it. Get them in as fast as we can without killing ourselves, and then, you know, we got plenty of time in between the pour and when it's ready to finish. So that's just what works for us. You can see running that bull float over that, how nice and smooth that looks. And because of the mix we use, like our go-to floor mix is a 3500 psi. It's got microfiber mesh in it. It's got water reducer in it, so we can pour a pretty loose slump for all the slump police out there that think, hey, you know, yeah, of course it's easy. You pour wet concrete. Well, it's wet for a reason, because we use water reducer, man. you don't know what water reducer is, then maybe you shouldn't be commenting on slumps, because obviously you don't know that much about concrete. That's how I feel when I hear that. It's like water reducers have been around forever. So, you know, learn a little bit about concrete before you start commenting about slumps, guys. You don't have to pour a 4-inch slump to be a man. Like, you can pour loose slumps, still have really strong concrete, get things done a lot easier, and still be a man. Crazy. Let me know what you guys think about that anyway. I probably, because I put so many videos out there, I get a lot more comments on it than what most of you guys expect. But anyway, we'll pour a 6.5, 7-inch slump all day long, every single day. I don't care. That's just what we do. Water reducer, man, it's the main thing. It's the main go-to for that. So Harvey's bull floating. I'm magging that pad to get the floor to the grade that we needed at in the middle. And Darren's going to finish pumping that out. We'll pump out almost everything we need to except for one little piece in the corner. That way, if we are a little bit high, we can pull that high back into the corner. There, a nice little adjustment on the camera for you. And then, so what we do is we'll just tell the concrete truck driver to hold on a minute. You know, we want to get this concrete down. He's not pushing us to hurry. We got a certain amount of time to dump out, you know, 10 yards of concrete. Basically, we got about an hour to dump that out, and it really only takes us about 10 minutes. So we'll just tell him, hey, you sit and wait while we get this pulled down. We don't want to get too much in here and have to shovel it out over the top of the wall. So he'll just sit and wait till we get to where we need to dump a little bit more. And again, it's basically using the same technique. Strike your pad, screed it down, get it bull floated. It's kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3. Now when you screed like this, that's a 12-foot board on the screed. They do come with longer ones. We could probably use a 14. That would be kind of handy sometimes. But the 12 works really good with this battery operated screed from MBW, their Screed Demon. And the guys raking really, you know, Luke and Darren, and then young Luke in the blue is raking behind me. If you got two really good rakers, like you can screed a lot of concrete really fast, so you don't have to stop. And I feel like that's the key, is not having to stop and start. Like once you start like this, you just want to keep slowly going backwards until you're done that bay. Like that's what we call a bay, is that section I'm doing right now. And the less you have to stop and start, the less likely there's going to be a hump or a dip in the floor, is what we found. And the key is, you know, those two guys raking, is to keep just a little bit of mud, a little bit of concrete behind the screed board. Don't let it build up too high, but definitely don't let it get low. And then when you get it down to a certain point, you got to stop. Let the bull float guy come in and bull float, because he can only reach so far. And then you're going to dump out a little bit more. So we start, you know, a project like this about 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. in the morning, kind of on our schedule, but we're also on the concrete company schedule. You know, they're like, hey Mike, can you start at 6 this morning for us? It would help us out if we get them trucks back so we can get them on to another job. Or, you know, another morning they'll be like, yeah, 7 a.m.'s fine, we can go at 7. And then if we want to start early for some reason, you know, we can ask them to do that too. Like if we have multiple jobs we're pouring, or if we have someplace, you know, if we want to leave like 2 guys here to finish, and then 2 of us or 3 of us go somewhere else to do something, we can kind of ask them, and they're kind of flexible that way too. And then the pump guy here, you know, when you order a pump, you usually have a certain amount of time that pump can be on the job, and if it's on there longer, like they're going to charge extra per hour. Usually it's for this company, it's you got them for 4 hours at a certain rate. You know, their rate is, I think it's around $1,100 here to get them here for 4 hours. So from the time they show up until the time they're washed out and driving out the driveway, that's the 4 hours. If they're there longer than that, then they're going to start charging you per hour. So, and they usually have multiple jobs lined up too. So if they're like a 6:30 pour, and they know they're in a certain section of the state, and you know, if they know who they're pouring for, like us, they know we're pretty fast, then they can schedule another pour if it's fairly close by, let's say for 3 hours from now or 4 hours from now. So they might have 2 pumps scheduled, or even 3, sometimes even 4, they say, in one day, where one guy goes and pumps 4 jobs. Not necessarily all floors like this either. You know, there might be one floor, then whatever, like 3 foundations in a day or something like that. But they're busy. They're not usually just pumping one job like this, then going home. So what we're doing is, once we get enough concrete, we got 3 trucks coming, 3 concrete trucks, 2 for the house, 1 for the garage. Once we get enough in the house, we'll take what's left in that second truck, and if it's not very much, like, we'll just pump it out in the garage to get rid of it and spread it out really low, spread it out below grade. And then, you know, we'll let him wash up, get out of the driveway, and then the third truck can pull in, as you'll see here in a minute. And then we can just pump out the third truck in the garage like it's a brand new floor, like there wasn't any concrete in there before. And the reason we do it that way versus, you know, pump out the second truck in the garage, what's left of the second truck in the garage, and then screed that little bit, and then add on from that with the third truck, is those 2 trucks are going to dry a lot differently when it comes to finishing. So you're going to basically be like finishing 2 different floors in the garage if you just finish with the second truck and then start with the third. So it's much easier to finish a garage like that if it's just 1 truck, 1 load, and it all finishes at the same rate. So that's why you'll see here in a second, when I adjust the camera, kind of what we did to the second truck. It's kind of like one of the tricks that we use to make the finishing process a lot easier. Now, I'm just finishing up in the basement. You know, we'll screed ourselves into a corner like this, put the ladder down, kind of like mag your way out. Make sure you got enough concrete to fill your booty marks. If you need a little bit more down in there, you know, a guy can drop a little bit more down in there with a Kumalong. Just get it somewhat smooth, pull the ladder out, and then, you know, we're done down there basically. So there's the concrete that was left over by the second truck. There was probably, I don't know, a yard and a half. And now we're starting on the third truck. So we'll go right over that stuff. We'll flatten that out down to about 1.5 inches thick or so, 2 inches thick. The garage is actually about 5 inches thick total. So now we'll just go right over it with the third truck. Get it all poured out like this, and then when it comes to finishing, it's basically we're just finishing 1 load instead of 2 here in the garage. So not that big a deal, but it does make a difference sometimes. What we're doing now is we're just giving that third truck, you know, we got a little bit dumped out. We were like, we kind of want that 1 slump looser. So he can give it, you know, if it's 10 yards, he'll give it 8, 9, 10 gallons of water. That's basically all the water he adds on the job site, because it's got the water reducer in it, and it'll bump that up another slump. That way we get the full advantage of using the water reducer, the full advantage of pouring, you know, a little bit looser slump, making the whole process a little bit easier. Now the garage here, the garage slopes from the back to the front. It's going to slope 2 inches. And then where the garage doors are, later on, after the concrete sets up a little bit, we'll taper those out a little bit more. And we like just putting, you know, we'll taper it from where the form is, that wooden form that we put on. We'll taper that down about a 1/2 inch. So when the garage door sits down on the concrete, it tapers on the outside of that garage door away from the garage. And we'll taper it back inside where that concrete wall is. You see that concrete wall is about 10 inches wide. So we'll make that taper go all the way in back there. And then you're never going to get water running back up under the door into the garage for 2 reasons. Number one is the whole floor slopes out the front. So water's not going to run in if it slopes out the front. And then we put a secondary taper where the door is. And then there's no trip edge there, so you got a really nice taper. A lot of guys, they like to recess that down 2 inches sometimes, 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So the garage door sets down into that recessed area. And then you got this little bump up, this little trip edge when you walk into your door. And, you know, that's not how we do it here. And I've never done it that way. I know how to do it, but we just never do it. I just don't see any logic in it, having a trip edge coming in your garage door for multiple reasons, you know. And one of them just could be handicap access. You know, one of them could be your little kids riding their bike in and out of the garage. Another one could be you're walking in the garage holding something and you forget about that little 2-inch lip there and you trip over it as you're walking in the garage. Like, there's better ways to handle a garage door opening than to recess it down 2 inches, I feel. And that's just, you know, we've never had water problems that way. Just for you guys that are in a different part of the country, maybe you do your garage doors differently than we do when it comes to finishing. You know, it's always worked for us. So we're just getting it screeded. We decided just to hand screed this just to show you guys like how two guys can hand screed concrete using a 14-foot screed. How quick and easy and fast this can be just by what we call kick screeding versus hand screed. And this is how we were taught, actually. Like, I was taught how to screed this way before they even had the vibrating screeds. So we didn't have a choice. We had to screed concrete. Well, you can see you can go a 14-foot by, you know, roughly 14-foot area in a matter of about 30 seconds. You can get that screeded down really fast. I mean, there's a bunch of different methods for whatever you call it, rodding concrete or screeding concrete. This is just the way we do it, and you know, once two guys learn how to do it that way together, they can be really fast. They can create a lot of concrete. Like I said, when I was brought up, when I was young, in my 18, 19, 20-year-olds, young 20s, you know, we would screed 20,000 square feet of floor this way, and I would grab one end of the rod. And me and another guy, we would screed the whole thing. That's all we would do for the whole 20,000 square feet, is just go from one bay to the other. Other guys were magging edges. Other guys were setting pads with lasers. We would just strike it off and screed. And if you just did that one thing on 20,000 square feet, it wasn't too bad. And you had two guys that could rake behind you really good. That made it pretty quick and easy. You can see how fast, you know, basically, there's 5 of us here, right? How 5 guys can dump out a garage in just a matter of minutes, really fast. I got other videos on that too, where, you know, we're not really racing the clock, but we're just showing you time-wise that, you know, if you use the techniques that we use or something similar, that you can dump concrete out and get it screeded, get it floated really quickly. And then basically what we're doing after this is we're just waiting for it to set up. Like on a day like today where it's cool, it's in the fall, we'll put a little bit of accelerator in the concrete just to help give it a little kick. Especially the sun doesn't get very high anymore. This garage will never see any sun today. It's going to be in the shade all day long. And if the temperatures are in the 50s, then that concrete's without accelerator and without warm water, that concrete's just going to sit there most of the day, not dry very fast at all. So we'll put a little bit of accelerator in it just to help give it a little kick, help let it cure up a little faster, because not only do we want to get it power trialed smooth today, but we also want to get the saw cuts in it today so we don't have to come back. Like, this is probably this is actually about almost an hour's drive from the shop, where a lot of our work is that far away. So this is actually an hour south. It's in a little town called Harpswell, Maine, right next to Bath, Maine. You could Google that. Bath, Maine is home of Bath Iron Works, where they make all the battleships for the military. So you could Google that and check that out. But we're in a little town called Harpswell, Maine, which is down on the coast of Maine. So it's south of where I live. Now tomorrow, the very next day, we could have concrete scheduled an hour north of here. So if we don't get the saw cuts in today, you know, one guy's going to have to travel from an hour north, basically 2 hours to get here just to saw the floor, and then an hour to get back to the shop. So that would be like 4 hours of traveling just to get saw cuts in. So we definitely like to saw cut the same day that we power trowel, and we got a special saw for that. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments about the methods that we use to pour concrete. Number one, how we like to dump a truck right out, and then, you know, mag our edges, mag our pads in the middle, get everything strike everything off, and then get it screeded and bowl floated. Do you think it's pretty easy technique? If you do it differently, you know, maybe comment how you do things a little bit differently. If you think your way is a little bit better, you know, let me know how you do it and why you think it's better. If you think there's anything wrong with the way we do things, you know, let me know what your opinion is. It's just whatever, the way we do it works for us here in Maine. And I realize you being in a different part of the country, sometimes the weather's different. Maybe your mix designs are a little bit different. Maybe your pouring method is a little different. So everything's, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So there's more than one way to do things right. And if your way you feel is right, that's perfectly fine too. I'm not going to knock on that. That's for sure. But again, if you're new to my channel, I come out with a couple videos a week all about concrete flat work kind of stuff. Please consider subscribing. If you're a returning visitor, thanks for coming back. Just, you know, give me a shout out down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.